Hello, my name is Samuel O, and this is going to be a YouTube video for the International TEP applicant prom. I'm going to briefly mention why I'm doing the YouTube video. I sent an email to the director of the TEP program, Anna Marie, Anna Marie Francis, and I believe she gave the approval that I could do this because I cannot make the interview dates on the 12th and the 19th for non-credentialed TEP applicants. Uh, yeah, so given that, I'm gonna go with the prompt that's provided on a TEP application for international students. And the prompt is you're a teacher leader representing a group of educators involved in opening a neighborhood public school. This school will serve low-income, racially, culturally, and linguistically diverse students. Please describe your vision for the school. Okay. So for the first part, I actually gave a name to the school that I envision, and I actually hope that one day I can build an institution like this. So the school's name is called Cloud9 Academy. It's going to be a public charter school. Now, when I think of the term Cloud9, people can understand Cloud9 to be simply put, a happy or euphoric state of mind. And sometimes it can have a negative stigma because the Cloud9 term is sometimes attached or is in relation to the feelings that you get when you take a drug. But that's not the direction that we want to go with this institution, obviously. The reason why I call it Cloud9 is because of the wealth of knowledge that is going to be implanted in the secondary school at this institution. With this knowledge, students will want to push the boundaries of the status quo in whatever endeavor they find themselves partaking in. Right? So, at least for me, when I push those boundaries, when I take those risks, there's this feeling, maybe an adrenaline rush, but a feeling of, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what's going to happen if I take this risk. Go beyond what is known, the unknown territory. There is this sense of excitement, risk, and all this kind of euphoric feelings. I think besides the negative aspects, and I feel like this academy is trying to go reach towards that goal, to have students take risks, to go beyond what is the boundaries and the status quo of what is expected of them. Now, I'm going to take some assumptions about this campus as well, or I mean the assumptions that are part of this prompt. So one thing is I want to assume that the community is somewhere in the Bay Area, currently where I am located right now, or it's going to be somewhere in the LA area since this is a UCLA TP application. And also the other assumption is that I'm not going to be concerned with financial supporting of the development of the school. So I think a lot of times going into any type of teacher vision, I'm sorry, school envisioning, school actual, I guess, building, you have to be visionary, ideological. At the same time, you have to be concrete. So right now, I'm going to be reasonably concrete, but at the same time, not be too concerned of how the financial supporting is happening in the backstage. Okay. So right now, I'm gonna start with the Cloud9's vision statement. And when I think about Cloud9, I think Cloud9 Academy has a vision of one, equipping students with fundamental skills that meet California's educational standards. Two, equipping students with skills and knowledges that will push them to become future trendsetters, industry initiators, inventors, and leaders. And three, providing a holistic education that develops students into responsible civic actors. I think those three realms is going to help target the interests and the needs of the community, and it's going to eventually change the environment and the culture of the location or the community where Cloud9 is serving. Okay. So in the first part of the prompt, besides the vision, it says how the vision for the school addresses the needs and the interests of the community. Um, So because the community is described as a low SES environment, then there's a diverse demographic, whether racially, culturally, linguistically, right? So I think the first thing, there's going to be two things that I'm going to cover. One thing is I think there's is an economic need and an interest, and I'll explain what that means. And there's also the social service and social needs. So the first one is economic, which is supported by the educational needs. So this is what I mean. In order to change the environment of the economy of the environment or economy of the community. Right now it's a low SES environment. But if we want to change that, and I'm pretty sure the parents would like that too, because they don't want to be they don't want to have to always commute out, or they don't want to always have to look for very low wage jobs, right? We want to change that type of culture. Well, one way of changing the economy of the environment is, one, by attracting local businesses around the area, or attracting external businesses to open opportunities for students to be interns. Okay, so there might be a question of, well, what is that? How are you going to attract local businesses or external businesses, right? Because there might not be no incentive for them to come here, but it's in the hope and that the school's vision is something that companies want to invest in, right? And there are incentives. For example, I took a class called Creating Schools, and in that class, what I learned was that one incentive people can make is, one way schools and businesses make relation is by letting, like, the lockers of the schools, for example, be branded with the logos of that company, but at the same time helping that company not only spread their name across parents, across different institutions, or whoever visits that school, but also, in addition to that, it's this company in return will be able to open up different opportunities to students at the school. So there's a relation and a rapport being built between the school and the companies outside the community. Yeah, or locally and externally. So why is this important? It's because it makes students more familiar or aware of the city surrounding. It makes students more familiar or aware of their city's surrounding and job prospects. So why is this important? It's important because I think if you want to, if the interest and the needs of a low SES environment is one, economic, then this school, Cloud9 Academy, needs to project and think about not just the educational needs and the services that we're providing now, but we need to think about what we can do in order to make um, the Cloud9's community a place for high retention, right? If students graduate from Cloud9 and they go off to college, right, and then I wonder, would they ever consider coming back? For example, I'm from Riverside, um, and when I think about Riverside, I don't ever want to go back because there's not much job prospects. There's nothing happening there. If there is an industry, man, I really don't know what kind of big industry there is in Riverside. There is no desire, or there is nothing that's attractive for me to go back there. So, reflectively, I hope that I Cloud9 Academy can be a place where we can think about long-term economic needs and changes so that the low SES environment can change, right? We're trying to make it a place where the generations that we teach right now in the institution will maybe consider coming back to the community where they first got their education at Cloud9. Why is that important? Retention of talent. Right? That's really important, and for any type of economy to increase, or to what I mean by increase is to have more money flowing through the community, right? And more employment prospects. And also, I think in the long run, if we're able to have this start with build a relation with different type of businesses, I think Cloud9 Academy can be a facility that expands beyond the secondary school. Or what I mean by secondary schooling is beyond high school education. So perhaps at night, right, we can rent and provide at low cost night adult language classes. Why is that important? Because a lot, if we're attending to or serving and attending a community that is racially, linguistically, culturally diverse, I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of parents would like to have basic English education. Why? So that it can help them uh, in whatever job opportunities that's going to be available for them or that are out there in the community or nearby. I think we can have that Cloud Ninth institution facility be available for ethnic communities to rally, advocate, and build a community amongst themselves within that, I guess, city. So, for example, um, we can rent out or we can just let people borrow the community space, and it can help in terms of creating a sense of belonging and a sense of school support at the various communities that the Cloud9 Academy supports. Why is that important to the economic or educational needs of the community? Well, it actually transitions really nicely into the social needs and the social services. When you have like these communities come in to rally, advocate, or just voice their opinion about what their needs are, right? It's hard to believe, but we need to know what those needs are first. So if you're able to bring them in, then we as administrators, we as faculty members and staff can listen in on these problems and listen to what the needs of the communities are more transparently, right? Some of the social needs and services that I hope that Cloud9 can bring are similar to Jeffrey Canada's Harlem Children's Zone. So from what I understand, Harlem Children's Zone didn't start out as a school that he Planet in Harlem. Rather, it was a school that had an after school that used to close off its building after the class hours were done. However, um, I guess Jeffrey Canada and his team went in and opened after school hours to provide social services, whether it be informative, basic parenting, or asthma awareness and preventing obesity, in addition to other different types of social services, whether it has to be with perhaps with immigration or employment. So, for what I imagine or what I hope um, Cloud9 Academy can serve and do can meet the needs of the community is, or how it can do that is by providing like immigration help to individuals or folks who are in the process of immigration or assimilation. For example, visas, green cards, addressing the needs of 8540 students. Right, there are a lot of things that the students, that these families and these students need besides the academic, and hopefully those needs we can provide after we can somewhat establish the academic aspect of the school first, right? And in addition to that, I hope that we can provide employment information, whether it be like work permits, basic tax in the country, or how the taxing works, mortgages, like what is that? How does that work here? Sometimes people might not know, and it'd be very convenient if there could be just a space where parents just come to and understand. Financial education, loans, all that kind of stuff is really important in terms of how the parents will be able to function within the family outside or whenever they come together, whenever they're doing their private businesses, right? And the last one, again, I want to replicate what Jeffrey Canada is doing, which is very successful in Harlem Children's Zone, which is informative meetings or workshops, whether it be basic parenting, asthma awareness, and preventing obesity. Why is that important, especially the low SES community? Is because, quite frankly, in the low SES community, there isn't information being sent out more accessibly, right? And two, there usually in a low SES community, there's rarely any fresh markets or local produce markets. There's maybe like a liquor store in the corner where people get their food, and it doesn't provide the best quality food, right? So hopefully that answers the question of how the vision of the school addresses the needs and interests of the community. Because ultimately, in the end, for economic and educational need, we're going to be trying to persuade them, attract them using our vision, trying to understand that the type of students we're trying to create are individuals that will be leaders, they'll be industry initiators, and um, I'm sorry, what was the last one? Excuse me. Oh, and trendsetters. That's right, trendsetters. So hopefully, we're going to give them a little bit more than just than a liberal education. Liberal studies education is more of it can be provided or closely combined with technical skills. And I'll go further into that later when it comes to educational experiences that they're gonna that the students will that Cloud9 Academy students will experience. So the next question is how the vision builds upon the community assets. So I think one uh, I think one thing in order to understand what the community assets are, you have to understand the demographics or who you're serving, and obviously from the prompt it says we're serving a racially, culturally, lingual diverse environment, and they're low SES, right? So I think one thing that we need to do is bring unity within the community. If, for example, if you in LA, it's a polyglot environment. There's so many languages, different cultures, right? I think just because you have the city of LA, it doesn't mean that people are unified in any way. It can be like divided into ethnic communities, correct? So I know that I saw a recent TED talk of Chimamanda Adichie. She was a Nigerian, and she explains how in her I guess in her story in her presentation, she explains how it's important to have children and students know the danger, quote unquote, the danger of a single story. What I mean by that is they need to know that there are different types of knowledges and different types of expertise, right? If you grow up in a community where all you're told is, or for at least Chimamanda, she tells a story that she grew up as a Nigerian girl reading books in English with a bunch of with all the characters being white girls or white characters. So there is some kind of a, I guess there was a mix up for her because then she just produced stories with white girls, not including her. She wasn't white, she was black, right? She was African actually. So hopefully, what I want to do is, in order to build upon the community assets, we need to bring that unity. And in order to bring that unity, I think it's important to show parents and students that there are alternative perspectives to life, and there's different and similar cultures, and then we can learn from everything, everyone, and everything. Right. So the more awareness that we bring, that's hopefully it's in the hope that there's going to be less stereotyping, less stigmas within the community, and those whatever stigmas that are there, that those things can be broken down, especially in the community that a Cloud9 would serve, right? I'm thinking of like LA riots, or I'm thinking of Oakland. Oakland is that's not the safest neighborhood, and it's very diverse, and just it would just be nice to be able to bring different type of communities together, right? Could sometimes it seems impossible, but we're hoping Cloud9 can push the boundaries of what expectations are. So one way we could do this is create an yearly cross-cultural exchange or fair where families and students um, come together and juxtapose or expose the backgrounds of the various ethnic communities, and they can show what each culture or family is capable of producing. So I think a lot of students from low SES communities grow up being ashamed of who they are or where they're from because they don't have the financial capacity, or they rarely ever see their parents because their parents are always working, right? So one thing that Cloud9 Academy could begin or to initiate is a cross-cultural exchange one time a year. It doesn't have to be bi-weekly or monthly, just one time a year, where students and families of Cloud9 Academy come together and put on a fair, or like an exchange or an exhibition for the community, not just for the school, but for the community, so that they can come and they can explore and see that, wow, like these are the type of different cultures individuals that live within my community, and I need to respect it, right? I need to at least understand that these things are part of the community that I live in, and maybe I can get to understand where they're coming from a little bit better. Um, what does that do uh, for the students of Cloud9? Well, that shows Cloud9 students that one, low SES students or students similar to the U.S. Should be proud of their backgrounds, and two, just helps them know that there's a rich family history, and it may perhaps it'll help them know or help them realize or begin to realize that there was a huge risk that their parents took if they had to come here from, if they were immigrants, refugee families, whatever it may be. Um, I think, in retrospect, for myself at least, I wish I knew my history a little bit better too. We were never actually asked to think about that. It was, yeah. So I kind of do wish that students at Cloud9 can have that opportunity to learn about themselves a little bit more and be proud of themselves. Another thing that we can do is create after school. I guess a little bit more concrete. Let's create after school transportation schedules with parents of Cloud9 with parents of the Cloud9 Academy. So, for example, I had a professor at UC Berkeley. Her name was Ingrid Sayer-Ochi, and she got her PhD in Stanford. And she said that while she was working in a very urban environment, she intentionally chose for her younger daughter to go to a public school. Now she did her own research, but a lot of times because she was so busy, she had to she couldn't give rides, and she was kind of afraid, right? Especially in a very multiculturally diverse place, you don't really know sometimes who to go to if there's a language barrier, culture barrier, or whatever it may be. But Professor Ingrid Sayer-Ochi, what she did was, she actually took the initiative to talk to an Asian woman. I believe she was Japanese, who also had a family. But her daughter and Ingrid's daughter were in like after school programs together, and Ingrid took the initiative to just set up transportation schedules with this Asian woman. So, and what happened was, one, there was a relationship being built, not just a service. It was more like parents being able to communicate with each other and saying, "Hey, look, I don't really know you, but you know what? I want to get to know you. I know, and I want to be able to help your family too." How? Well, there's sometimes that I can give rides, and some days that I can't. So maybe we can set a schedule up, right? So maybe sorry, excuse me. So maybe what Cloud9 can do is create that type of parent transportation service for parents who might be more open than not. Now, of course, when I think of community assets, I think about, well, there's so many individuals in a community that may or may not be doing something active at that time, right? So creating type of after school transportation schedule might be very helpful, because I, I can I can already assume or believe that, even though I'm not considering too much of the financial backing, because of the needs of the community, it's going to be inevitable that we use every worker or every individual that can walk on their two legs, in the community to the best capacity that we can, right? And yeah, I think it's better to have people doing something than just be idle. And I'm pretty sure most people would want that too, to have to feel and have a sense of purpose. And I think that creating an after-school transportation service will be good for the students, especially because then they're able to see cross-cultural communication, especially if the students or students' parents are, aren't ethnically the same, don't speak the same language. I think it can be good. Body language is a universal language that we can kind of communicate with each other, and that's another topic. But yeah, I think that's one thing that we can do in order to take advantage of the community assets. And another thing is, by doing this type of a service, I guess you could say, I think students will understand that there's a universal belief that every parent wants the best for their children, right? And the reason why I pause there is because sometimes there's some crazy racial stigmas out there that say, oh, like these type of race or those type of races are lazy, or that some crazy weird stereotypes saying that yeah they don't care about their students or their children, and I think if we set something up like this, and if the students see like their parents, like an Asian parents with a black parents cooperating, man, how beautiful would that be? They could see that, wow, my parents aren't don't only just hang out with Asian people. No, they're willing to work with uh, different ethnicities and races. And another thing is we can set up volunteer programs that can use the energy and the time of these of perhaps immigrant uh, individuals who just immigrated, right? And that they don't really have language skills or like or technical skills or any real skills for that matter. So perhaps what we can do is somehow set up programs where we can collect or actually herd all those individuals into one place and then be able to put them into different type of volunteer work, and the work and energy that they provide will be I guess free labor for us as is Cloud9 Academy, but at the same time we can give the incentive for, oh hey, if you work with us in these volunteer programs or whatever things that we need, then what we can provide you with is like a free night language adult class or free technical night classes. And I think that's really important because there has to be some kind of like a what do I get, like from the individual's side, the individual that's new, who doesn't know what he or she is capable of getting in terms of a job. They'll be able to at least know that, hey, I'm getting this service, and when I provide my work and energy. Now, next question is how faculty and staff will support student achievement. So I think it's really important to define student achievement as both quantitative and qualitative. So what I mean by quantitative is obviously student test scores. In order to keep accountable of teachers, we need to keep them accountable to that they are finishing the California standards, educational standards. We need to make sure that their test scores are up to par. But you know what? A lot of times, with this huge wave of testing and assessment, I think it's very important that we don't make that the emphasis. The emphasis should be the qualitative. And what I mean by qualitative is the type of education that they get, which will be talked about in the next section. And beyond that is that things that accompany or complement the curriculum design or the teaching that's happening within the school. For example, the other things are student internships, work experience, extracurricular experiences, whether it be sports or whatever, and other things like that, or clubs. Yeah. So one thing that we can, how faculty and staff can support student achievement is this. So the first one I put down is hiring faculty and staff who understand the school philosophy and are on board with the vision statement. Now, it seems so foolish perhaps, but I need to make this clear because without unity in the institution's team, there's going to be tensions in beliefs and direction of the school will not be progressing. It's going to progress a lot slower than what it ought to be at because there are tensions within the team, and I don't think that's necessary. Why build a team that's going to have different beliefs on where the school should go, right? Hopefully the school will be it'll be an institution where everybody's on board and everybody wants to go toward the same direction, and they want to be there, they want to be serving this community. So, and again, the teachers and the staff or faculty and staff will want to make sure that they're not only fulfilling the vision statement that I provided to you earlier, but in addition to that, they're going to achieve both the quantitative and qualitative aspects of whatever student achievement meant. Right. Number two is making sure faculty and staff know each other's workload and responsibilities. So, for example, this past summer, I worked in this program called Summer Bridge. When in this program, the week before any type of training was done, there was an additional training where the faculty and staff of the program came together to know what the boundaries and responsibilities of each group was. Why is this important? This is important because people need to know their boundaries in terms of what their workload demands and what their workload is or what they're supposed to do with the services that they provide, and two, to know the additional resources within the institution. So, for example, as a teacher, I was a writing coach, or we have writing coach at the time. Mine's my responsibility was weighed more on the academia aspect, not necessarily the emotional needs or the students' uh, financial needs, whatever it may be. Though I could give them advice, right? I also knew that I could refer them to somebody else. Now, why is that important? It's really important because faculty and staff need to know whom to refer to, whom to refer students to, right? Because if I'm trying to be Superman and trying to cater towards every type of need for every student, I'm gonna get worn out, and I'm not gonna, and most likely I'm not gonna provide them the most, I would say, effective advice because I am not an expert in everything, right? So, what this means is that if the faculty and staff know each other's workload and responsibilities, we're trying to work towards balance, right? We're trying to work towards a communicative environment, teamwork, trust, and efficiency, right? If you have all those things, balance, communication, teamwork, trust, and efficiency, I'm pretty sure that we're going to have an effective institution as a whole. Um, some concrete things that we can also provide are like assistance with special needs students, disabled students, um, on-site psychological counseling, or perhaps or even after-school tutoring for those individuals that need it. If we're gonna have to extend summer hours, or longer school years, fine, let's do it. But let's make it exciting. Let's not make it something that's kind of another just a drawn out program. I don't want that. I would want that the longer the year, there's going to be more time to put more things in there. That's going to be more enriching for the students. And then number four is this is kind of something I've been thinking about, is have staff who are both grant writers and researchers. So, for example, we need more money to come in, more investments, more rapport being built with different businesses or local or nearby businesses. But beyond that, I think the work of staff is really crucial, especially in the research that they do. So, for example, I know as a recent graduate, I'm constantly looking through educational news and education, and looking at trends in education. And something that I realize is the different type of technological advancement. Um, so, for example, for like free pedagogical software or free pedagogical lessons for different disciplines. For example, like Khan Academy, all free, all online. Students can access it online if they have a computer, right? Khan Academy, different online learning applications that students can use in order to help improve their understanding of material. Different types of data systems, and I would think that the staff could be able to research educational trends. For example, the MOOC movement. Where is the massive open online class movement going? Where's it heading? Is it something that we can use? Can we implement it into Cloud9 Academy? Like, what can we do with that? And different technological implementations for like games. Like, how can we put games into science classes, or what can we do in order to help teachers or supplement teachers with the best amount of materials, right? I feel like staff could help teachers so much if they just knew a little bit more and did more research on that besides just school staff work, right? And that way we can serve the community, the needs of the students, and definitely support student achievement. And finally, we come to the last topic, which is the kinds of educational experiences students will engage in to close the achievement gap. Now, I talked about before that achievement gap is quantitative or qualitative, and the qualitative aspect, it needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, especially with the curriculum. So what I have here written down is the curriculum design is extremely important because depending on the design, students will be able to connect classroom material to the world beyond the confines of the classroom and see education as a practical tool for them to wield. I think a lot of, growing up as a student in a low SES community, man, a lot of my education was fragmented in a sense. And what I mean by fragmented was it was so confined to the classroom. It was never really attached to the outside realm. Things inside the English classroom stayed in the English classroom. Things inside AP Euro or European class or whatever it may, or for history, it just stayed in there. There was no like connection to how it had anything to my life or anything to um, I don't know, a life to a 1.5 generation student. Right? It was very fragmented. So I think there are a couple things that we could do, or that I envision that Cloud9 Academy students will experience. I want to say that the type of curriculum design will be more problem based and project based. What I mean by that is, I think to know why education is important to your life is to know how education can be used to solve a problem. I don't think a lot of people know it that way or see education that way. Rather, they see education as just a thing where you can get you're kind of like a box of trivia knowledge. It's you become smarter, book smart, but it has nothing to do with like how you function in the real world. No, that's terrible. We hopefully we want to show that education is important so that you can solve problems in the real world. It's not independent from it. No, there's a relationship, right? So the hopefully the curriculum that the teachers will want to implement is problem based. That just seems more like oh we're does that is that it seems more easier for like quantitative classes perhaps, but also uh, disciplines besides like math or economics and statistics, you can become more problem based with English or history when you approach or come to understand those disciplines as I guess subjects that approach problems in a different manner, in a different perspective. Right? Project based, I think, is really important because if the curriculum designs are set up more to cater towards individual or to set up environments for team to work within a team, then students will be able to not only emulate a professional environment, but they're going to be able to learn skills that go way beyond California's fundamental California standards, such as accountability systems and team management. Like, oh my goodness, those are real life things. And if students don't get that now, well, when are they going to get that? Who's going to teach it to them? I guess they're going to learn it in college when they, screw up or they have a hard time and they're building tension with other college students. No, like if we can be the first ones to help them understand this is how the real world functions, then man, I think it's going to be so much so much more helpful for them, and it's going to close the achievement gap. And that idea of achievement gap it's kind of abstract because it's even though if a student doesn't have the greatest GPA, but it has a lot of experiences, man, that person has achieved, right? It's not the test scores that matter only. It's other aspects and elements that go into a student's educational experience to help close that achievement gap. So those are the first two, problem-based and project-based. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is something very, very important to me, which is cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary learning. Because the idea that disciplines can cross over, or you can have research projects or projects where two different teachers of two different disciplines work together somehow, is really important because it's going to prevent students from having a siloed or fragmented education. So what I mean by siloed or fragmented education is, again, talking about whether history just stays with history, or whether English just stays with English literature and language, or math, right? I think it's education. It cannot be fragmented or um, I guess divided or defined by those separate boundaries. If you think about it, life. Of course, humans categorize things, so that's why we have these different subjects and disciplines. But if you think about it, English and English language is so closely related to math. And so here's some different things that I had in mind for interdisciplinary learning, which is like with math and English and psychology, those or even biology, those different subjects can come together to think about basic logic, semiology, or the study of signs and symbols, right? How we attribute meaning to those things. I want to look at math problems in English language or whatever it may be as very similar things. Sure, they have, one's more qualitative, one's more descriptive. One more qualitative and descriptive, the other one's more definitive and has more quantitative. However, I also want to believe that those are all signs. As human beings, we have the capacity to make meaning out of these signs, right? And we're attributing meaning to them. So I think if students can know that, man, how much more of a fluid education would that be to see that, oh, hey, math actually has something to do with English, that they're not separate. No, no. And like to be able to know that, hey, wow, we're actually perceiving things, we're sensing these things, right? And determining meaning through these perceptions and sensations that we feel. Man, I could totally see students being so enlightened by this. This is like different type of education that high schools could provide, right? If teachers are just willing to work. Um, and another thing is like English and history. I know that there is the high school that I used to work with called Oakland Tech had this program called the Padea program, and the Padea program was a joint hit program with the English and history disciplines. And one thing that those two disciplines come together is apartheid when during the civil rights movement and the whole apartheid government ruling, there's a certain type of language involved. Like if we're talking about English language, you've got to think about, well, what is the origin, history, the etymology of these different type of languages that come to with it. What is the history of the English language at a specific time period, and how does that influence the history, and how does the history influence the language? It goes back and forth. There's a relationship there. If students can know that, man, how awesome would that be? And finally, I think this is really interesting because this is people rarely ever think about this cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary experience, thinking about arts and sciences. Now, I know I've come across a lot of people who say, "Oh, arts is just emotional, like an emotional thing, like emotional project or I guess endeavor, and there is no real, anything can be an art. I can put smack a dot in the middle of a whiteboard, and there you go, abstract art or modern art. I don't know. I'm not an artist, so forgive me, but there is an actual science, and there is a design principle and behind art, fine arts, different types of arts, and there's a artistic type of thinking or design principle thinking within science, especially scientific method. When I think about art and the science, for example, from my personal experience, at I didn't get better at reading until I learned how language was composed through dance. Like how does that work? Well, because when I was so invested in dance, I understood the dance language, and that dance language and composition needed to have a certain flow to it. And without that flow, then the dance didn't work. And the movements were very fragmented, and it was kind of like, I guess, uh, sporadic. I guess you can say there was no flow to it. So, for example, arts and sciences, there is different type of design principles. You need to know as a student of the arts, the history. Perhaps you can, imitate the teacher, but more than just imitation, what if you knew the history to the technique that you're leading, that you're working on, the theory behind the technique that you're working on, and then if you come to understand that theory very well, push that boundaries a little bit more, test the knowledge or the status quo that is given to you. Like that's what art is trying to do. It's expanding the realm of like trying to find beauty or the understanding these different type of perception qualities, right? And producing works of your own. And similarly, science is trying to do that too. I mean, scientists need to know the literature behind the different type of things that they're researching. I mean, no scientist is going to research something that's already been researched upon. No, they're going to try to find, they're going to know the literature, they're going to know the history behind a certain subject that they're very interested in, and then from there they're going to try to push the boundaries by going in foreign territory, things that they are unfamiliar with or they have a curiosity with, and then hypothesize about that, create I guess an experiment that can be that can be emulated and replicated, and then hopefully found a theory, right? And yeah, I think if the arts and sciences could just learn from each other, man, that would be beautiful, because I think that kind of cross-disciplinary thinking would help individuals and students learn that, man, the arts and sciences they're so deeply connected to each other. And why I think it's really important that the cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary learning is attached to, again, the vision of the school. The vision of the school, again to repeat, is um, to equip students with fundamental skills that meet California education standards, equip students with skills and knowledge that will push them to become future trendsetters, industry initiators, inventors, and leaders, and provide a holistic education that develops students into responsible civic actors. If these subjects and things are I guess if there's classes or some kind of activity that the teachers faculty participate in that are very cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, then I think students will be able to see that how much more like I guess the different type of needs that a community might that a community might need at a time. So for example, you know, these cross-disciplinary activities can help students understand that, oh, in my community we don't we have a lack of understanding of the history and the language that is attached to the history of this neighborhood. Or for example, if math if math and like sciences were a little bit more closely related, maybe we can students will be able to push the boundaries and the thinking of the community a little bit more. Why? Because they can say that, oh, hey, even though I can do these mathematical things, there isn't much of a, I guess, scientific industry here, and I wish I could just push that. I wish I could bring something over here, right? I'm not really sure if I'm being clear on that last notion, but I really envision Cloud9 Academy to be a place where students want to give back to where they come from, and they will have to have an incentive, and by hopefully bringing these other, you know, businesses in, they'll be able to they'll at least just consider it and consider coming back home, right? Yeah, so I think those are the four different aspects that I was supposed to answer from the prompt. I hope I was able to give a convincing uh, response to, you know, what a school should look like. I mean, not what a school should look like, but what as a spokesman for a group of educators, what we're hoping this public school would look like. Yeah, thank you very much for your time and energy, and I hope that we'll meet again. Yeah.